KFUG Community Radio. It is 10:30. Paul Critz with you, and the as yet to still be unnamed. It was the End of the World show last year. I'm not sure what we'll call it this year. I've got Jessica Cejnar from the Wild Rivers Outpost sitting here at the microphone. Say hi, Jessica.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, it works great. And then on the phone, joined by Will Meriwether. You with us, Will? Hey.
I'm with you.
Right. Oh, good. I wanted to make sure everything was working. We've got Will, of course, is a professor of history and Poli Sci out at CR. He's been on KFUG a number of times. He's an author as well. And yesterday, or last night, I guess, I saw your invitation, Will, to your Facebook friends to have folks join you on a drinking Zoom call to sort of decompress and contextualize and deal with and put into perspective the events of yesterday. So let's just start with that, Will, if you don't mind. How did that call go and what happened? Any insights?
So it went great. I got to talk and see people from my past and all over the U.S. I probably drank too much. I'm feeling it today. I'm not as young as I used to be.
So did they?
But yeah, yesterday was a crazy day.
Can you? Well, I don't know. What sort of feelings, what sort of thoughts and emotions did the folks on the call bring to you? I mean, I imagine, was it just the array of from dismay and all of that, or was there a reaction that you didn't expect?
So dismay, shock. There were a whole lot of people yesterday shocked. Even going to different news outlets and listening to politicians from all over the U.S., they were shocked. My friends and family were kind of in that same category of, I can't believe this is happening. And I had actually been telling students that this was going to happen. Mm-hmm. That not necessarily the extent, but after the election, whenever Donald Trump refused to concede after the Electoral College, after the Associated Press had said that the election went to Joe Biden, he kept telling his supporters that it's a fraud, that there was elections were stolen, that the voting systems were rigged. And this is a way to kind of take down democracy. And one of the things that I did, and I helped reassure them, was that last night when we had the call, we were good. Like, our democracy survived because in the moment in which people had to decide which side they were going to be on, most of them decided that our democracy is more important than one man trying to steal an election. And I do want to reiterate that that is exactly what he was trying to do. There were all these court cases challenging fraudulent votes, but they never had evidence. All of those cases got thrown out of courts repeatedly. This is what happens whenever we allow individuals in leadership positions to lie and ramp people up.
Is there a? I know you're also a history professor at CR. Is there a historical context or examples in history of maybe not to this level, but of a president refusing to concede an election and repeating statements that isn't true, is factually inaccurate? That you can think
no.
of?
So we've never had a president refuse to concede after the election. We've never had a something like this coming from the top.
Okay.
But there are historical examples of coups, or at least attempted coups, in the U.S. In 1932, after the election of FDR, there were a group of bankers led by Prescott Bush who started trying to promote General Smedley Butler. And at first, they were just promoting him He was a very popular figure with veterans, with those who were still serving, and they had him going around the country giving all of these speeches. And in 1933, after the inauguration of FDR, and we started seeing some of these banking regulations, they wanted him to challenge FDR and to launch a military coup. And Smedley Butler went to Congress and said, this is what's happening, this is who's involved. And they pretty much just laughed him out of Congress, saying, we don't believe you. And then later on, all of these things started coming out, but nothing happened to those who had tried to orchestrate it. But, you know, even if we go back to the Civil War, those people were calling for an insurrection against the United States government. And we still glorify those individuals. And so this is, our past is catching up to us.
That's a fantastic way of putting it. I mean, to see the stars and bars kind of waved through the house, you know, the halls of Congress and the halls of the Capitol. I'm not sure a lot of people realize, just historically, what that means. I mean, this is the battle flag of the Confederacy, and here it is in the halls of Congress yesterday.
And that flag yesterday was closer. You know, it was in the Capitol building. It never got that close.
Right.
In the Civil War.
Right. I was thinking about that. Here's this this shirtless guy doing what Robert E. Lee couldn't do.
Right.
And again, I think it's also because, you know, we've allowed this. We've allowed this. There's Confederate flags flying just right down the road from us here, and we've never dealt with all of these things that it seems historically have torn us apart from the very beginning. And that's one thing, you bring the historical perspective, which is very, very important. One thing, just in American history studies, one thing especially looking at the first few presidencies, right? Looking at, after looking at the Adams administration into Jefferson and things were crazy back then too, back when the democracy was brand new, or when our republic was brand new like that. I mean, just a lot of what was happening in the press and mobs in the street and basically gangs being called out and all of these things happening. It seems, is yesterday, I mean, it seems like, yeah, yesterday was striking and strange and weird for us in modern America, but over the history of America, was yesterday that aberrant?
No. We've been lucky that since World War II, both parties were incredibly close when it comes to foreign policy. They were somewhat close in regards to domestic policy. And since the 1980s, our nation has really been splitting politically. And so this has been building for a while. And I want to reiterate, or I want to highlight that after the Civil War, we put up statues to the people who waged war against us. Like the Confederate flag and the people who fly that are flying a flag of individuals who levied war against the United States. And we have schools and buildings named after Robert E. Lee, who had his citizenship stricken from him, and he doesn't get it back until the 1970s, well after he was dead.
Really, even when he headed the university and all of the things he did in the latter part of his life after the war, he was not a citizen? I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. And so after the Civil War, a lot of historians, especially in the South, started writing what was called the lost cause ideology, and they put forth this idea that they were right and they lost the war for all of these other reasons, but it wasn't for the reasons in which they waged it. They still put forth this idea that it was a noble cause. They tried to reform the figures who had led the revolution and the rebellion against the U.S. And they put up statues glorifying them. And that's, whenever we build statues, whenever we name buildings after people, we do it because they deserve it, because we want to honor them in some particular way.
It's a way of folding historical figures kind of into our national narrative, right?
Right. You know, there is not a single statue of Benedict Arnold in the United States that has his face, that tries to glorify him. There's only one statue to him, and it's of his left foot at Saratoga, because that's where he had gotten shot.
Oh, wow.
And even if we go back and we look at the election of 1801 and this peaceful transfer of power, that was rare.
Yeah.
But it is Thomas Jefferson's VP, Aaron Burr. He actually ends up getting charged with treason.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this idea that we can't hold Trump accountable for what he did isn't there. The only reason Aaron Burr was found not guilty was Article 3 of the United States Constitution spells out explicitly what treason is and the only ways in which you can be found guilty of that crime is it requires two individuals to testify against you who had direct evidence. So they saw the act actually occur, and they only had one direct evidence and several indirect evidence.
Yeah, Burr was good at that. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And he was trying to pry away, or they were saying he was trying to pry away part of the United States, and he was talking with the Spanish and the British and doing all of these, and nobody really knows exactly what he was trying to do. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sorry, you had something you were going to ask, Jessica.
I was going to ask. It sounds like, I mean, there have been several lawmakers, even in the president's own party, even among his own cabinet, that are saying that he instigated the mob violence that we saw at the Capitol yesterday. What sorts of consequences could he face? I mean, I know the 25th Amendment has been kind of thrown out there as a possibility. What sorts of consequences could he face potentially as a result of what occurred? What are you doing? Yesterday.
There's a Republican rep from Illinois, Adam Kinzinger, who called this what it is. This was an attempted coup. And right now, there are articles of impeachment that are being worked on in the House, and they need to pass. As much as I would love Joe Biden to be the 46th president, he needs to be number 47. For the next 2 weeks, we need a President Pence. Because whenever you impeach a president, you're saying that they've abused their power, they've committed some high crime or misdemeanor. And the punishment for impeachment is only removal from office or removal from office and never being allowed to hold a position of public trust again. That means, and that is what the Senate needs to do. Right now, Donald Trump could leave office at the end of his term and in 4 years run for office again. He could run for office in a House election in a very conservative state and go back to Congress, and he could go to Congress. There's precedent for that. John Quincy Adams, after he left the presidency, ended up serving in the House again. So impeachment has to happen. And we have to hold Donald Trump accountable for this because there's direct evidence from his mouth, his tweets, that he had instigated this. He told people to show up on January 6th at the Capitol. It's going to be a wild time. They had this rally, and he told them to go to the Capitol, to march to the Capitol, and fight like hell for what is right. And if I was in front of a crowd, me, Will Meriwether, as an individual citizen, and I told a crowd that we have to go march somewhere and we have to fight like hell, that would be inciting a riot.
Can you speak at all to the 25th Amendment? That's also been a lot around in the headlines this morning, and actually for the last 4 years. But it seems like now you've got Republicans talking about this possibility. Is it applicable in this case?
It is, and we've had politicians who've been saying, well, we should invoke this over the time, and now there are actual members of Donald Trump's cabinet saying this needs to happen. And invoking the 25th Amendment would temporarily give Mike Pence the presidency. Donald Trump also has the ability to fight part of that.